Hi, my name is Mike Kelly, and I'm an assistant professor in the core division. And what I'm going to be talking about for the next 5 minutes in this core talk are the theoretical underpinnings behind the way that I approach particularly Core 125, which is Rhetoric 2, and also the stakes for what it means to teach rhetoric in contemporary higher ed. And so the common assumptions around what it means to teach writing and to do writing, I think, are rapidly changing in awesome ways. And so one of the things that all professors, I think, do is they try to privilege the importance of their class and what they do. And I'm going to do exactly that same thing here in this segment. But I think that I'll put forward an argument that is reasonably persuasive, and I'll explain the history behind it and how it applies to students and the way and just what the stakes are when it comes to teaching writing right now. So criticisms of student writing have been along since the beginning of freshman composition. I mean, we're talking 1860s Harvard. The persistent theme that's never completely eroded is that our students are morons who can't write. The prospect of the rabble coming in to our sites of higher ed in need of remediation has been a persistent theme that's carried over each decade, and right now is no different. And so it's easy to spot, I mean, you don't have to be in a classroom for longer than 2 weeks and collect more than one assignment to see instances of horrifying prose, misplaced commas, incomplete ideas. But the reality is that the students that we have are right now reading and writing more than they ever have in any generation in human history. It just looks a lot different. And so what to do about that as a professor in a class like Rhetoric 2 is a hell of a challenge, and one that I haven't even completely figured out. But here are the things that I think that I know. I know that the means of the textual production that students are creating in a DIY way should be this really exciting and bold thing that should be a boon to any rhetoric professor. I also know that doing the work of rhetoric is incredibly difficult, and I think that that's true for a couple of reasons. So first, it's really hard for anybody, not just college students, to access information that has the requisite degree of expertise. It's entirely possible for a human being to completely consume just news that preconforms with their already existing worldview. And so to teach a class like argument, sometimes at its worst means mining the internet for stuff that already agrees with what you want to say, no matter how batshit it is. And then put it into an academic essay. This is a challenge, but it's also relevant to the stakes that a class like this will have. And one of the things that and so the reliability of information is something that I think should be a core tenet of any class like this. And it's very, very hard for students to get a handle on just what this means in a world full of tweets and tumbles and YouTube and conspiratorial YouTube videos. But nevertheless, the importance of recognizing and increasing the value of expertise in writing matters a lot. So there's always going to be room for a canonical approach to teaching rhetoric. Nobody's ever going to go wrong with texts like Letter from a Birmingham Jail or On Being, or any of the number of ones that populate the various readers around. But I think that one of the most exciting things about, or one of the most exciting prospects about what it means to teach this class going forward is to figure out the different ways texts work rhetorically in order to make arguments, to influence people's points of view, how the visual and the textual have an interplay that creates meaning and seeks out truth in ways that previously weren't possible. So to harness all of that within the course of a 16-week semester is a really hard thing. Now, in future core talks, I'll talk a little bit more about how specifically that looks in my 125 class. But for now, suffice to say that one of the things that I think that people ought to be mindful of when it comes to teaching a class like that is, one, how do different texts work rhetorically? And far beyond the traditional essay and the traditional oratory, how are different texts being used to create meaning? The second thing is to talk about institutions and talk about how in order to make authentic change, part of what it means to act rhetorically is to recognize how the changes you want to see made actually get made. Who has the power to do that? What specifically are their sensibilities, and how best can you construct a text that's going to appeal to those sensibilities? And then the third thing is that I try to do a lot is to take time to evaluate the argumentative stance that the author is coming from, and to pay careful attention to the way we talk about biases, the ways that we talk about the other contexts that inform the textual production. Because none of it exists just within the text itself. It's all situated within a wider context that's really hard for people to see, especially an 18-year-old who is looking at who's used to a schooling environment where close, careful attention to the text is pretty much the one thing that gets privileged. And so I haven't completely figured out how to do this yet. But I do know that how best to teach students to do the three things that I just mentioned is going to be a cornerstone of what it means to teach a course like 125 and to teach in the discipline of composition and rhetoric during the course of my career. So stay tuned. Thank you for your patience.